Hi everyone, it's Raylene, and today I would like to speak about commodity-backed currency. And in particular, I wanted to focus my attention on the 2008 Great Financial Crisis, which is the 10th year anniversary just on the 15th of September. And also talk about 9/11 and about gold-backed currency in particular. So, looking at the financial crisis, commodities commodities were on a general decline for decades until the turn of the 21st century. And then in mid 2008 saw a rise of 75% in commodity prices. So that happened just before the Great Financial Crisis, just before in mid 2008. Saw the rapid rise, the rise, like 75% in commodity prices. And well, we know what happened after 2008. Commodity prices plunged, and they've been volatile ever since. So yeah, commodities. If we look at what happened 7 years prior to that financial crisis, and also too, something quickly to mention is that the 2008 Great Financial Crisis was greatly the result of fiat money. So money that's not backed by any commodities. Where you had the Federal Reserve in America and that just printing out paper money willy-nilly, and though that was the consequence of that, of issuing currency that's not backed by any commodity. And so talking about commodities and backed currencies, I'd like to draw your attention to what happened before 9/11. And that was in the year 2000. So the year before 9/11 terror attacks on the World Trade Center. Well, there was studies conducted and research conducted and proposed in Malaysia by the Malaysian president, I believe, at the time, for gold-backed currency, a gold coin, a gold dinar. So it wasn't Muammar Gaddafi, like years later in Libya, proposing exactly the same thing. It was first proposed in Malaysia in the year 2000. That Islamic countries got together to bring this about within the Islamic countries for trade. And well, we know what happened the following year. 9/11 happened, caused by none other than Islamic terrorists. And well, did the gold dinar or the gold-backed currency in Islamic countries happen? No, of course it didn't happen. If anything, 9/11 sought to disrupt that plan, and it did. It did. But for how long? So, I'm just disturbed by the whole 9/11 thing, and in particular, I'm disturbed by the fact that on the 15th of September, like a few days after 9/11, the New York Times, yes, the New York Times published an article about metric tons of gold buried underneath the World Trade Center, under those buildings. And my mind was just like blown. It's like, really? Did 9/11 had to happen? Did those buildings have to fucking come down and all those lives lost because of fucking gold buried underneath those buildings? We know Building 7 didn't even have a fucking plane go through it, but it came down. Did it come down because there was gold buried underneath that building too? Anyways, so 9/11, was that two birds, one stone? Was it because of the gold that needed to be had? And was it to prevent gold-backed currencies from Islamic countries, the demonization of Islamic countries? And well, we know that there was Saudi Arabian terrorists. So I want to know, was Saudi Arabia involved in that research, or was Saudi Arabia like the thorn in the side? Was Saudi Arabia the country that wasn't rich in any gold resources and didn't want that to come about either? And well, back to the future. So in this present climate, there's been a lot of talk about moving towards gold-backed currency. And well, we know that gold is a commodity that is the same throughout the world, and in particular with gold smuggling and putting stamps on gold that's actually being smuggled from other countries. But apart from that, I wanted to speak about soft commodities. So gold is classified as a hard commodity, such as a hard commodity like oil, gold, metals, they're soft commodities, is what you call commodities such as agricultural products, so meat and livestock, or grain and coffee and so on. In particular in what's happening in Australia, which we're currently looking at a ban in livestock. And there's a real concern in Australia about the harm that ban would cause with Australian farmers. And when we look at this Awazi Express, so this ship that was exporting livestock to the Middle East, well, Saudi Arabia is also one of the world's biggest importers of livestock. So I'm curious if a ban will ever happen. And I'm curious also too about the link of that. When we're talking about bans, what about the ban with the niqab and the burqa? Would that have to happen first from Saudi Arabia? Would Saudi Arabia set the trend? Would Saudi Arabia need to ban livestock imports? Would Saudi Arabia need to move towards frozen meat from long-haul countries? Anyways, I think there's something to be said for billionaires moving towards livestock and cattle farming and dairy processing. And well, just this morning I read in The Guardian that there was this foundation that published this article that Europe got to halve. They're warning Europe. Europe's got to like halve their meat production and their dairy processing by 2050, or else, I don't know, there's going to be some major fucking climate change shit going down. What a load of shit. All those cows fighting is going to cause climate change. Oh my God. And that's something to be said for bullshit science. I am, and I bet the world over, is so sick of being dictated to about our commodities. And that's what we should all be focusing on. We should be very skeptical about articles or politicians, bought politician bitches, telling us what we've got to do with renewables and coal and all this stuff, and think about it. Think about how that is going to affect the small people of the world. How does it affect our economies and our markets? And if we do move towards commodity-based currency, whether it's gold, whether it's livestock and meat, how is that going to affect the stock market? Would it be beneficial? Would it be controlled? Would it be able to be manipulated? Those are questions that we need to look at. And we really need to think about when we're bullshitted to about climate change, when the biggest concern of climate change is like cloud seeding and the disruption to our soil that grows these commodities, such as pesticides that causes disease as well. So when we're thinking about stuff, think about that. Think about soft commodities as well as hard commodities such as gold-backed currency. There's an underestimation about softness. Remember, people, gold is soft too. Literally. Anyways, so that's all I have for you today. And subscribe to R Squared and like me.